Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca, otherwise known as Hypnot Hooray Online, and this is podcast episode 14. So in this episode, I have one finished object to share, my first summer knitting project. I have quite a few whips, technically the most whips I've ever had on the go, but we'll get into that a little bit later. I have a few acquisitions, and then I just wanted to touch on my next plan for this summer. So starting off with the finished objects, this is my pie camisole, and it's a design by Nabita of Creadia Studio. So this is the second pie camisole that I ever knit. The first one was one that I test knit for Nabita 2 summers ago, and I won this yarn through the pie camisole knit along last year, and so I thought, you know, of course it's only fitting that I knit a second pie camisole this summer. The first version I have here, and they are a little bit different from each other actually, even though they're technically the same size. So this first black one, maybe I'll put a picture to show how it fits on me. I knit the size extra small, but I sized down to 2mm needles because at the time I think my tension was maybe a little bit tighter. I don't know, but this one ended up being, has more, I guess, negative ease. This one is also an extra small, but I knit with the suggested needle size to achieve gauge, which is 2.5mm needles, and it's still fitted, but there is a little bit more positive ease. So it's just a little bit more of a comfortable top, and you can see that I did knit the second version, the brown one, just a tad bit longer as well. So in terms of the process of this camisole and how you knit it, it is a top-down camisole, knit in a very, I think, familiar way. If you've knit other top-down camisoles before, you knit the front and the back panel separately, you join them in the round, and then you knit the body. But what I think makes this pie camisole really unique is, of course, the really thick 1x1 rib for the neckline as well as the armholes. So once you finish working the body, you pick up stitches to knit each armhole separately, and then you have to connect them at the top with a neckline. And as I mentioned in the last podcast episode, you're essentially knitting a big loop like that. And then you cast on stitches for the neckline by picking up stitches along the front and the back. But then for the armhole here, part of this loop, you're doing an Italian cast on to create this really nice clean finish. I really enjoy that, and it's very stretchy, so it fits the neckline really well. And then you're knitting 1x1 rib up until you get to the top, and then you're doing a Italian or tubular cast off. The top I knit almost exactly to pattern, so I followed the exact stitch counts. I followed the length of the top. The only modification that I made was I made the hems 1 centimeter shorter to 4 centimeters. I don't really know why. I think I just preferred the look. I thought it was a little bit more balanced on me, so I didn't end up knitting the extra centimeter. And for the body 1x1 rib, I ended up working that inside out in my last, I spoke about this in my last podcast episode. I just thought it created a neater finish. For the rest of the ribbing, the armhole ribbing as well as the neckline, I did size down to 2mm needles, and I knit them, I guess, regularly. I didn't work them inside out, and I guess you can't really work them inside out because it's flat anyways for the armholes. But yeah, something interesting, or at least I thought it was kind of interesting when I was working the neckline ribbing, is I knit the neckline the first time to the same number of rows as all of my other ribbing. And when I cast off, I did all of the tubular bind off, everything. I tried on the top, and the neckline was really narrow, or the band looked really narrow, and it just didn't look the same. It looked a little bit off balance to the armhole and the body, and I wasn't really sure why. And I ended up unpicking the tubular bind off, putting it back on my needles, and working an additional 5 rounds. And so I don't know if you can really tell, it is 5 rounds taller on the neckline, but it still looks the same as the armhole and the body. I'm wondering if it maybe has to do with the tubular bind off, which impacts the height of the work. I'm not really sure, but I ended up needing to have to work a few more rounds for it to kind of look the same, at least in my eyes. So yeah, that was something that I wasn't really expecting, so I ended up needing to unpick it. But of course, with something like this, I just was willing to frog and redo, just like with the body ribbing, just to get it as perfect as possible. And I'm really happy with the finished object. The pattern is really well written. I didn't have any issues with following it. I thought it was really clear, straightforward. There's some video tutorials as well for parts of the top, like the neckline, the Italian cast on. So totally recommend that that pattern. I really love Navita's designs. They're very, I don't know, like modern, classic. So really enjoyed this pie camisole from her. I totally recommend the pattern. In terms of the yarn, I used Oenling number 11 in the shade Alabama, which is 90% merino and 10% cashmere. And I really love the yarn. I would totally work with it again. And maybe it's a little bit easier for me to say that because I didn't pay for the yarn itself. I won it through a giveaway. So yeah, it's easy for me to kind of say that because I didn't pay for it in the first place, but it is a really nice yarn. There is a difference though, quite a big difference I find when wearing it compared to the Knitting for Olive Merino. So Knitting for Olive Merino is 100% merino. I'm sure many of you have worked with it before. And in terms of the knitting experience with it, the Oenling number 11 is a lot more loftier and lighter, I guess, than the Knitting for Olive Merino. And I'm not really sure why. I'm thinking maybe it's the cashmere in it. It's definitely a more delicate fiber. It's not going to fall apart in your hands when you work with it, but if you do gently tug on it, like to break the yarn, I did that for when I was ready to break the yarn for different parts of the garment. You could just pull it pretty easily and it would come apart. So I guess it's just not spun as tightly maybe as the Knitting for Olive Merino. And then also once you block this piece, maybe you can tell on camera, maybe not, but there is like a subtle halo to it. The yarn really blooms and the fluff kind of fills in some uneven stitches and some extra space. So I think this yarn would be really great in the future as a single fingering weight strand. I'm thinking for like fingering weight sweaters, and I'm thinking of knitting, I might look to Oenling number 11 because that fluff just really fills in the space and creates a really even tension. And I was a little bit worried about that fluff and it would be kind of uncomfortable for summer wear, but this yarn is super, super soft. It's softer than the Knitting for Olive Merino. Again, I think because of the cashmere, and it is really comfortable to wear out. I've worn it out in like 25, 30 degree weather and haven't had really any issues. So really happy with this top overall. I feel like I've spoken about this pie camisole design and this piece itself quite a lot over the past few months, and I totally recommend this pattern. Okay, and my next whip that I have to share is the Audrey top by Petite Knit. And the Audrey top would have been a finished object because I have been working on it a lot, but I've just been very unsure, confused about the modifications and the changes that I've made. So I just have put off really finishing it because I'm just not sure. So yeah, I'd really like your opinions on this piece and yeah, maybe some ideas. So the Audrey top is a bottom-up camisole, but you can make a modification to work it middle up, which I have done with a Judy's Magic cast on, and it is a high neck halter tank top like this, knit on the suggested needle size for gauge is 4mm needles. I sized down to 3.5 just because I liked the finished fabric more, and I'm knitting a size medium because of that to account for the difference, but I probably would have knit a size small for this camisole. The yarn that I'm using is Premier Yarn Cotton Fair in the shade Cream. I'm almost done this ball, but it comes on this large cardboard roll, so not the most efficient packaging for this yarn, but I do like it. I've worked with it before in other projects. and it's a 52% cotton, 48% acrylic, I believe, if I got that ratio right. I think it's that. I have almost finished the Audrey top, but I just have a few modifications that I'm not too sure about. So in my last podcast, I spoke about the folded down picot hem that I did for the front, and a few of you left some really helpful suggestions for how I can make the edge lie a little bit more flat. So I haven't blocked it yet, and I haven't tried those yet, but thank you for those suggestions. I did go back and I made some changes to the back edge as well as the bottom. So I knit to the length specified in the pattern, and I was ready to cast off, but based off of how the back cast off looked, I wasn't sure about that for the body. So I decided to work a few rounds of 1x1 rib. I've just worked a short 4 rounds of 1x1 rib. I think it's about 1 or 1.5 centimeters, and I'm thinking of doing a tubular cast off for that. And I just don't really trust that this yarn is going to lay flat because there's not a ton of drape to it, and also I feel like I won't be able to manipulate it as much because of the acrylic content. And so I decided to do that short 1x1 rib that doesn't take away from the picot edge. I still wanted it to be a very simple design, and I didn't want to do that picot edge on the bottom because of the rolling, in case I couldn't straighten that out for a whole circumference of the top. So I did the short 1x1 rib here, and then it got me thinking that maybe I should replicate it at the back panel. So I did that. I went back and I undid my pearl bind off. It was really simple to do, so I just undid that, and then I did the same 1x1 rib at the back panel, 4 rounds, and then just did a tubular bind off. And while I was doing those 4 rounds of 1x1 rib, I kept that just stockinette border here, so then I can graft the I-cord strap to that, and it looks a little bit more seamless than if I were to graft it to 1x1 rib. So I left that border, and then I finished it, and now I'm not too sure about it. I liked the way that the pearl cast off looked a little bit more. I just worry that it may not look very cohesive because the bottom is 1x1 rib, the top is a picot edge, and then the back is a pearl bind off. Maybe I'm just thinking about it a little bit too much because this also doesn't look that nice to me. I don't really know. So I am still thinking about how I'm going to do the back, which is why I haven't connected the I-cord straps. So yeah, let me know what you think. Does this look a little bit off balance? You won't be able to really see the 1x1 rib from the front, so it's not like you're going to be seeing them like this, I guess. Or at least I don't think you'll be able to see the 1x1 rib from the front. I just don't know, if I do a pearl round at the back, will it still look okay with the 1x1 rib for the bottom hem, or is there too much going on? Is there too much going on like this? Yeah, I don't really know. So I just need to come to a decision so I can finally graft the straps to the back and then cast this off. But that's why I haven't really finished this top yet. It is a really simple, relaxing knit because of the stockinette, so it is a nice project to have on the needles. I don't know if I'm doing too much with the modifications of the cast off, and now I have decision paralysis. Can't decide. So that's it for my Audrey top. My next whip that I have to share is another Petite knit design. It is my Jenny jacket v-neck, and I have finished the back panel. So the Jenny jacket v-neck is an all over smock stitch jacket pattern knit top down on 4mm needles, and I am knitting, I haven't exactly decided yet. You don't really need to for the back panel because the stitch counts are the same for, I believe, the size extra small and the small, and those are the two sizes that I'm kind of going back and forth between. I don't know how much ease that I want on this jacket, and it is a little bit hard to tell because I think that the smock stitch really relaxes and grows a bit after blocking, so it does look a little bit smaller now. So for me, I wonder if that's why it's harder for me to gauge how I want it to fit, because I can't exactly visualize it right now. But I don't have to decide that until I finish the front 2 panels, because I think the sizing changes by the number of stitches you cast on for the underarm, I believe. And so yeah, I finished the back panel. There's not too much of a difference between how I knit this in the last podcast episode and this one. It's just now I'm not doing the short rows and I'm just working this smock stitch flat. I did speak about how I was worried that my smocking tension, the row that I did the smock part of this design was a little bit too tight, and trying to figure out how to keep my tension even. And I thought that maybe that wouldn't really be a concern, but actually I ended up needing to go back and frog and fix some of these smock stitch cables or smock stitches. I'm having trouble trying to describe smock stitch right now. But basically with the smock stitch, you are, I explained it in the last one, and maybe many of you already know to do it, but if you don't, you basically have to insert your needle 6 stitches to the left and then pull up a loop, and then you knit that with one of the stitches here. And there is kind of like a tensioning to it, I guess. It depends how much you pull on that stitch that you just pulled up for how tightly the work cinches in, I think. And so as I was working more of this smock stitch flat, you could see as I went further and further up like this, I was pulling on this smock stitch a little bit more, and there ended up being a little hole on the left side of the smock stitch. You can kind of see it on one of them here, one there, and you could see that my tension was really tightening up. And so yeah, it does make a little bit of a difference how tightly you pull on that stitch. So I ended up frogging about 18 rows back, and I'm a lot happier with how I've reworked it. But yeah, just trying to keep my tension a little bit loose, but still, I guess, natural, so I can replicate it throughout the whole jacket. So yes, I finished the back panel, and then now I'm going to go on to the 2 front panels. This has been a really nice portable project to bring around. It's the knitting project that I always bring on the go, just because it's very slow, it's very meditative, and it's still small enough where I can bring it around until, yeah, I maybe start working on the sleeves and it's too big to bring out anywhere, but it's been really nice. So this is the back panel, and this is actually knit with 1 ball of palette, and I just finished the ball of palette right here, so it was perfect timing because that was the end of the back panel. And I'm actually surprised that this is how much you could get from just 1 ball of that yarn. I am really liking this yarn combination as well. I don't think I mentioned I'm using Knit Picks palette in the shade Finley Heather, and then Knit Picks Aloft in the shade Plover. And then yarn combination together is just, I love it. The Finley Heather creates a really nice dimension to the smock stitch, and it's not the softest yarn. It's a Peruvian Highland wool, and it's by no means like scratchy or irritating. I definitely think I could wear it on its own as a finished fabric, but the Knit Picks Plover just really softens it up. And Plover, or Aloft, the yarn, has a really lovely halo, so I'm just really excited for this combination on the jacket. My next whip that I have to share is my honey vest, and here I am with the vest. So I have finished working the armhole ribbing. It's a double folded down stockinette hem, and I decided to work the armhole ribbing now just to get a better sense of how the vest is going to fit. I mentioned before that I wasn't sure if this front panel was too narrow, so I just thought that if I add the armhole hem here, it can just give me a better picture of how it's going to fit. And you use the same yarn as the horizontal back panel, and the yarns that I'm using for this project, the hem colors here is Mominoki Finnwool in the shade Milk Tea, and I believe this is a hand-dyed yarn, but it's really kind of a single color. There might be a little bit of tonality to it, but yeah, it's just a nice neutral warm tone cream, I guess. I was trying to get the same color as the Plutolopi, and so I think it just looks really cohesive and balanced. And then yeah, the other 2 strands that I used is Plutolopi in the shade light beige, and then Artfil MericanaDK in the shade copper for that background color. So back to the hems. The hems are worked in the same size as the body of the vest, but I decided to size down to 3mm needles, so went down 0.5mm of a needle size for them, and I think I ended up picking up, I would say, maybe 7 out of the 8 stitches. Yeah, there wasn't really any rhyme or reason to it. I just didn't want to pick up in every stitch because I wanted the armhole to be a little bit more cinched, which is why I sized down to 3mm needles, and then I didn't end up picking up every stitch. Except for the back panel. Actually, when I was picking up stitches for the back panel, when I was skipping stitches, you could see this purl bump, and I think it was the purl bump of the cast on edge. So for the back panel here, I ended up needing to pick up every stitch. And then you work a few rounds of stockinette, and then if you can tell, there's a purl round just to change the direction of how the fabric is going to fold. And when I did that the first time, I didn't change my needle size for that round, and some of the purl stitches looked a little bit wonky. Again, this is probably a very minor, small difference, but it was bothering me. So for that last round of stockinette before you work the purl round, I ended up sizing down even more to 2.5mm needles to work the last round of stockinette, which is going to end up being that purl bump. And then after that last round of stockinette before the purl round, I went back to the 3mm needles, did the purl round, and then the rest of the stitches for the stockinette here. And I just think it looks a lot cleaner than what it did before. So I'm really happy with that subtle change. So yeah, I did that for both the hems, and then I sewed them down. So I just did a regular knit bind off and then seamed it down with a darning needle. And you can kind of tell here, but there is a little bit of excess fabric here, which is just the Plutolopi. You get that from the edge stitch when you're working the 2-color honeycomb brioche. And so what's nice about the folded down hem is it doesn't really look that bad, but you can kind of hide all of that and tuck it into the folded down hem. So I think it just creates a really nice finish on the inside as well. You just have to seam 1 row into where you picked up the stitches. And yeah, it just creates a really nice finish. I'm really happy with it. I've done folded down sewn hems before, like my camisole number 9, and I'm a lot happier with the way that I did it this time. Maybe it's because I used the fingering weight wool, and so it wasn't that messy, but yeah, it ended up turning out really nice. I'm really happy with that. When I tried on this vest, I noticed that the hem was flaring out a tad, especially at the back right here. It doesn't really sit flat, and I'm thinking that that might be fixed with blocking, so I didn't think it was a big issue. Maybe if I picked up even less stitches, then it would lay a little bit more flat here and it might not flare out, but I don't really know. I did thread elastic through one side. I think this side, yeah. I thread elastic through this side, a really thin elastic that you usually can thread into for your neckline to make that sit a little bit tighter. And that makes it sit a lot more flat when I cinch it in a little bit. So I just have it threaded through here, but I'm gonna block the vest when I'm done and then see if it sits flat. If not, it can be fixed with the elastic thread, so no big deal. I have also worked a little bit more of the body since my last podcast episode. This is now my TV knitting, so it's very relaxing, brioche to work, and I'm just working it flat until it's time to shape the rounded front hems. You do that with decreases. I think it just looks better than ending the vest flat like this. So yeah, there's some decreases there. But until then, it's just really relaxing knitting. So that is the progress on my honey vest. Back to really enjoying working on this whip. And now I have the rest of my whips, and the reason why at the beginning of the podcast episode I said that I have technically the most whips that I've ever had on the needles. and it's because I am back to knitting some ornaments. So maybe I should give a little bit more of the backstory first. So I was helping out my boyfriend's mom, Grace, if you're watching this video, with her art festival. She was recently a vendor at an art festival here in the city, and so I was helping her with setting up. Didn't play a major role, just helping her with pricing things, writing signs, helping her set up on a day. And I thought it was really fun. It was a really fun process being part of an in-person event, showing your work. And she also encouraged me to maybe consider selling my ornaments this year. And that kind of planted a seed in my head because I really love knitting ornaments. Last year I knit all the ornaments on my Christmas tree. I also gifted some ornaments to some family and friends. And I was also looking at my scrap yarn bags. I have two that I have alongside my yarn stash here, and they are getting really, really full. They almost nothing can fit into those bags now. So I thought that it would be a really fun like just creative exercise to knit as many ornaments that I can out of my scrap yarn, and then we'll see how it goes from there. Living in Toronto, there's always a ton of local pop-ups, craft fair events, and these would work really well for the holiday season. So nothing is determined yet. I don't know if I'm going to sign up for any of those, but I figured I might as well try to build up some sort of stock now or collection, and then kind of evaluate from there. And if anything, it'll just be a way for me to use up my stash, and then I might have an entire garland of sweaters, mushrooms, things like that to gift or thread on a garland for my own apartment. So yeah, I've started on it now in July, which seems a little bit early, but if I do want to maybe think about vending at a craft fair, then I have the ornaments ready. So that is the whole backstory of why I have all of these whips going on, and I have them in my large project bag from the Knitting Swan in the new Cherries print, which is perfect because it stores so much stuff. So the ornaments that I've been knitting, there are many. I have quite a few right now. The first one is this silhouette it's inspired by the mini crop puff, which is a free pattern by the Wandering Flock, but I've modified it so much that I almost want to say that this is kind of half self-drafted, I guess. I've changed the stitch counts, I've changed the needle size, I've added stripes. Like, it's a little bit different, but yeah, it's based off of the mini crop puff, which I enjoyed working up last year. I knit 2 for my Christmas tree, and I did this really fun blue and red combination. I just have one sleeve to work. So this is the first ornament. The second I'm trying to self-draft some hats, and this was my first version of it. I wasn't really happy with the decreases, so I'm working a second version here. And I'm a little bit more happier with how it sits, and I'm gonna add some pom-poms here, like 2 pom-poms like that. So I thought this would be a really cute ornament. And this one I'm using the scraps from my Candyland wrap. So it's this nice merino wool, and I know it's gonna grow a little bit with blocking, so I'm happy with this size. So yeah, just trying to figure out a hat proportion that I like for an ornament. So that's the second one that I've been working on. The third one are my favorite Christmas toadstool mushrooms. I am almost done this one. I made a few modifications to this pattern. It's a pattern by Marin Curly, the Christmas toadstool. I made a few modifications to make the mushroom bigger, and so I've just been experimenting with a different decrease than the versions that I worked last year. So almost done with this one, just have a few more rounds to go. And I just love working it with the Noro Silk Garden Sock Solo. There's so many colors in this, and so each mushroom is never going to turn out the same, and I really love this brown one. And it's now transitioning into pink, so you can kind of see it at the top Really like that. So that's the third ornament. And then the fourth pattern that I've been following, and I made a ton of them, or not really, but I made 8. And I'm halfway through, or maybe 3/4 through making this. I have to block them, embroider on a little design. I like to embroider on a little door, and then seam the bottom close. So yeah, I started off with just the brown, and then I really liked this color, which is this here. It's Sayona in the shade Guthrie. This one is the leftovers from my April cardigan. Still, I have so much of that. It's Lang Yabble in the shade Golden Fields, and Knitting for Olive in the shade Ochre. I already knit this exact combination for an ornament that I gifted last year. And so yeah, I made 8 of them because I figured that they don't take up too much time to knit, maybe an hour and a bit of time to knit it, but then maybe another 30 minutes or so for the finishing. So I figured I might as well knit a bunch of them, block them all at the same time, kind of like an assembly line process. So yeah, I have a bunch of these little cottages. I really love working them. They're a really cute design, and everyone that I gifted them to last year absolutely loved this one. So yeah, working on a ton of these. So all in all, that brings out the total to 12 current whips. I mean, some of them are almost done. Just have to weave in the ends and stuff them and embroider them. But yeah, I have a few of these ornaments on the go, and it's just been a really creative and fun process. They are just really fun to knit. I'm really proud of the ones that I made last year for my own tree, and if you can kind of tell from these ones, it really is my outlet for experimenting with color as well. I feel like a lot of my projects that I knit as garments are more neutrals, and that's just my personal style. I don't really knit with a ton of pastels or bright pops of color like this, so the ornaments are kind of my outlet for that, and it's really fun. Like for example, I am knitting this tiny sweater, and I mean, actually looking at it, I might wear a sweater in these colors, but it allows me to knit an entire sweater technically with these colors, and yeah, just experiment. So I have all of my ornaments here, and then we'll see what happens with them. I'm not too fussed. It's just something that I like to have on the go. I am going to maybe knit a few ornaments a week, and we'll see. And they all are being stored in my large project bag. So it may look like just a lot of scrap yarn, but there is a process to this. I have all of my colors on the outside. There are a ton of pockets in this bag. There's 6 large size pockets around the circumference of the bag, and then the really large bottom base. So in the middle, I have all of my neutral shades for ornaments, because that's kind of just the staple for a lot of them. I have a neutral white, and then they're all different scrap yarns that I have. And then around the outside, because the pockets are so big, I've been able to store different colors of scrap yarn, so I just have them ready. And I find this is the easiest and best way for me to kind of spark creativity and just look at the shades together and always have them all in one place where I can easily see everything. So this is just on my living room floor, and then whenever I feel like knitting an ornament, I just pick up the bag, kind of hold colors together, and then go from there. So yeah, this has been a really great project bag for that, and it is a recent acquisition that I have, which I guess maybe, I think I'm done talking about ornaments, so maybe I'll go into those acquisitions. I got 2 things gifted from Tao of the Knitting Swan, so thank you so much, Tao. This is the second large project bag that I have from the Knitting Swan, and this is part of her newest collection. She has a cherries print and a wild poppies print, and the cherries print is just super summery. I really like it. And this is the large project bag, and then as part of her launch as well earlier on in the summer, she also released some new products for notions and tools. So there's a needles pouch, I believe there's a double pointed needles pouch, and then a notions pouch like this. So I was really excited to receive this notions pouch. It was good timing actually, because I was using this Knit Picks clear acrylic case that I got a few years ago now, which doesn't even close. So I can never really bring it around as a portable notions bag because it doesn't close anymore. I have to close it with a rubber band. So it was nice to be able to replace it with a notions pouch that has been designed for knitters in mind. You can always use like a pencil case or any sort of small pouch like this for your knitting accessories, but this one has been really designed for knitters in mind, I think. The notions bag is wide enough where you can fit a crochet hook, which I've done because I always like to have one. Oops. I always like to have one on the go. And then there are 4 pockets on the inside. So 2 large ones here. One of them I'm storing my small scissors. One of them I'm storing my tape measure. And then hopefully I can show this. But there are pockets here with flaps, so it stores things really securely. So in this one I have my stitch holders, and in the other one I have my darning needles. And it's just a really compact, really well made case. I absolutely love the print. If I didn't mention already, Tao designs the print herself and gets them custom printed and then turns them into these lovely project bags. So yeah, there's now 4 prints in I guess her entire library of products. So if you don't like this one, check out all the other ones that are available. This one I think was the first design ever made, and I use these project bags every day. This one has been great for the ornaments, and this I already mentioned is the large project bag. So yes, very excited, really happy for these bags. Thank you so much, Tao, for sending them to me. And my next acquisition that I have is kind of a flop. Oh, one of them fell, one sec. Okay, so my next acquisition is a flop, kind of. And it's because I got an extra ball of Knitting for Olive merino to try to extend the length of this Cumulus tee. So I knit this Cumulus tee in 2022, and I knit it with Knitting for Olive merino, I already mentioned, in the shade Deep Petroleum Blue. And I knit it with a short sleeve, a shorter sleeve than what the pattern suggests. At the time I thought that I would wear a shorter sleeve like this, but I really haven't worn this top very much since then. And ever since I knit that second Cumulus tee, the white one with a 3/4 length sleeves, I just wear that one so much more. And so I thought that I would wear this one a lot more if I extended the sleeves. But the problem is I only have this much of the Knitting for Olive merino, the original one that I knit the tee in. I only have this much left. And I knit this body a lot, or not a lot longer, but quite a few centimeters longer than my second Cumulus tee, which I was able to get a 3/4 length sleeve out of 3 balls of Knitting for Olive cotton merino. And so I knew that I wasn't going to get that with this tee unless I took out some length on the bottom and then added to the sleeves. And I guess I could do, but I don't really want to. And so I decided to take a chance. I haven't really heard that much about different dye lots with Knitting for Olive yarn. And so I decided to order it, even though it's been well over 2 years since I got this yarn, and just see what happens. So I got 1 ball, and you can see, I mean, maybe it's not going to show up on the camera, but the colors are pretty different, sadly, which is totally fine. That's totally fair that they're not going to be the same, but yeah, it's going to be quite different, I think. If I knit 1 sleeve with this and then 1 sleeve with the newer ball, it's just going to look a little bit off, especially in a stockinette like this, where this is the only strand that I'm holding for it. It's a single strand. Maybe if I had mohair, I could diffuse it a little bit more and then knit every other round with it, but it's just not going to work. And so I think with this tee, I may frog it and have the yarn and knit a mixed rib camisole designed by Florence, of Handmade by Florence, with this blue yarn, because I initially wanted to knit that camisole with a light gray yarn, but I think I would really like that top in a darker color for me. And since I already don't wear this tee a lot, I don't mind frogging it for the yarn, and I would have enough to knit that camisole and use this as well. So I'm thinking of frogging this. Just don't wear it that much, mainly because of the length of the sleeve, but also I find that the drape is not as nice as the cotton merino for a tee like this. So I just don't reach for this at all. So even though I love the silhouette itself, I would have liked it more with longer sleeves. So yeah, that was a little bit of an experiment with this merino. The dye lots are a little different. I'm still gonna use this for maybe a small accessory. So not a complete waste because I do like the color, but a bit of a waste for this top. So that was my single yarn acquisition. I did also buy this on sale from Unit from one of their holiday sales. So it's final sale as well. So it's not, I can't return it. So yeah, I'll find another project for it, no worries. And it's just not gonna be this cumulus tee, which leads me into my plans. This yarn I had here was what I originally wanted to knit the mixed rib camisole in, but I since decided I think a darker color like this would work better for a camisole for me. I'm envisioning it more in that navy gray, or sorry, in that navy blue. And I'm almost gonna do a switch. I'm gonna frog this cumulus tee for the mixed rib camisole. Maybe I'll get to it this summer, maybe I won't. And then I'm going to knit with this yarn a third cumulus tee. I have had this yarn for quite a while, over 3 years. It's Illimani Sabri, 85% organic cotton, 15% baby alpaca, and I have 800 meters total, which is 50 meters more than what I had for my 3/4 length cumulus tee, so I know it can be done. Won't be playing as much yarn chicken, hopefully. I'll try to extend the sleeves a little bit longer, but I figured that this fingering weight cotton and alpaca blend will work really well for the cumulus tee. I think it's gonna have better drape than this merino does. And I really like this light gray as a neutral because I really wear that 3/4 length cumulus tee a lot as a late summer layering piece. So I think that this fiber combination is also gonna be a bit better. And yeah, it's gonna be my third cumulus tee. Clearly I love that pattern, but a little bit of a change in my summer knitting plans. So yeah, hopefully in the next podcast episode, I think definitely I will have cast this on and made some progress on it. So a little bit of a change in plans. So that was everything for my updates in this podcast episode. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much if you reached this point in the video. I'm really inspired right now with the idea of some late summer projects, things that you can wear as a light layer when the evenings get a little bit cooler, but it's still quite warm outside, hence my 3/4 length cumulus tee. And there were quite a few other patterns that I was considering. So I'm thinking of making that video, pattern inspiration, a roundup. It's been a while since I made one of those, of some knit pieces that you may want to wear in those late summer periods. So until that video, I'll see you later, and happy knitting.